Danny Cole had never seen so many aliens in one place before. The trade station called Nexus 7 was enormous, floating in the darkness of space like a city made of metal and glass. Ships came and went through dozens of docking ports, and the main halls were filled with creatures from worlds Danny had only read about in training manuals. He walked through the crowd with a small cargo container floating behind him on an anti-gravity sled, trying not to stare at the beings around him. Some were tall and covered in scales. Others were short and furry. A few seemed to be made of living crystal, and their bodies caught the light in beautiful ways as they moved. Danny was part of Earth's new trade delegation, sent to introduce human goods to the galactic market. It was an important job, and he took it seriously. The container behind him held samples of Earth produce, carefully selected to show what humanity had to offer. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and spices filled the sealed compartments. Danny had spent weeks preparing for this moment, learning about alien customs and trade protocols. He was ready for anything, or so he thought. The inspection bay was a large room near the docking area where all incoming cargo had to be checked. Danny waited in line behind a merchant with 6 arms who was arguing about import taxes. When his turn came, he pushed his container forward and smiled at the official behind the scanning equipment. The official was a species that looked something like a giant praying mantis with compound eyes and long, delicate limbs. The name badge on their uniform read Specialist. Ran a scanner over the container and studied the results on a floating screen. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then the compound eyes widened in what Danny recognized as alarm, stepped back from the container and made a sharp clicking sound that Danny's translator rendered as a call for assistance. Within seconds, 2 security officers appeared. They were reptilian beings with thick scales and muscular builds, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. The one in front had commander insignia on his chest. His name was, and he looked at Danny with obvious suspicion. "What is the meaning of this?" asked in a voice that trembled slightly. The pointed at the scanner screen with a shaking limb. "Do you see what is in this container?" Looked at the screen and his scales seemed to grow paler. He turned to Danny with narrowed eyes. "Human," he said in a cold voice, "you have brought biological hazards onto this station. Explain yourself." Danny blinked in confusion. He looked at the screen but could not read the alien text. "I am sorry," he said carefully. "I do not understand. These are just food samples from Earth. Fruits and vegetables, nothing dangerous." "Nothing dangerous," repeated. They made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cry of disbelief. "According to our toxicology database, you have brought Class 4 biological hazards onto this station. These round red objects contain cyanogenic glycosides. They are poison." Danny looked at the image on the screen and suddenly understood. "Those are apples," he said. "They are one of the most common fruits on Earth. Billions of humans eat them every day." A crowd had begun to gather around the inspection bay. Merchants and travelers stopped to watch the commotion, whispering to each other in dozens of different languages. Danny heard fragments through his translator. "Death fruit," someone said. "Humans are insane," said another. "They bring poison as gifts." Stepped forward, trying to be gentle despite their obvious fear. "Human Danny," they said softly, "I understand that your species comes from a dangerous world. We have heard the stories about Earth. The extreme gravity, the unpredictable weather, the predators that hunt in every environment. But surely you must know that consuming cyanide is fatal. Perhaps your people do not realize what these fruits contain." "We know about the cyanide," Danny said. "It is only in the seeds, and even then, you would have to eat many seeds to be harmed. The flesh of the fruit is completely safe. Humans have been eating apples for thousands of years." Made a growling sound deep in his throat. "Impossible," he declared. "No species could evolve to consume poison. You are either lying or confused. Either way, this cargo must be quarantined immediately. Perhaps your entire ship should be quarantined as well." The crowd grew larger and louder. Danny saw fear in the faces around him. fear mixed with fascination. A small furry creature near the front was standing on its back legs to get a better view. Its large eyes were fixed on the container with intense curiosity rather than terror. But most of the aliens were backing away, creating a circle of empty space around Danny and his deadly cargo. "Please remain calm," said to the crowd. "We are handling the situation. There is no need for panic." But panic was already spreading. Danny heard alarms begin to sound in distant corridors. Someone had reported a biological hazard, and the station was responding. Security officers were pushing through the crowd, setting up containment barriers. A medical team arrived with equipment that looked designed to handle toxic spills. Danny felt frustration building in his chest. This was supposed to be a simple trade mission, a chance to build goodwill between Earth and the galactic community. Instead, he was being treated like a criminal because he had brought apples. Apples, the most ordinary fruit in human existence. He looked down at his container and made a decision. The seals on the cargo were designed to open with a touch of his hand. He pressed his palm against the panel and heard the soft hiss of the compartment opening. "Human, what are you doing?" shouted. "Step away from the hazardous materials." Danny reached into the container and pulled out a single red apple. It was perfect, round and shiny, the kind of apple that would make anyone back on Earth hungry just looking at it. He held it up so everyone could see. The crowd gasped. Several aliens screamed, made a desperate clicking sound, and reached toward Danny as if trying to stop him from doing something terrible. "Please," they begged, "put down the death fruit. We can help you. You do not have to do this." Danny looked at the apple in his hand, then at the terrified faces all around him. He thought about all the training he had received, all the protocols about respecting alien cultures and avoiding misunderstandings. Then he thought about how hungry he was because he had skipped breakfast that morning. He smiled with genuine warmth. "Would you like to see something amazing?" he asked. And before anyone could stop him, Danny raised the apple to his lips. The sound of Danny biting into the apple echoed through the inspection bay like a thunderclap. It was just a simple crunch, the same sound that billions of humans made every day without thinking. But to the aliens watching, it might as well have been the sound of death itself. Let out a high-pitched wail and covered their compound eyes with their long limbs, roared and drew his weapon, though he seemed unsure what to do with it. Several members of the crowd simply fainted, their bodies collapsing to the floor in heaps of fur and scales and crystal. Others ran, pushing and shoving in their desperation to escape from the suicidal human and his poison fruit. Danny chewed slowly, savoring the sweet taste of the apple. It was a good one, crisp and juicy, exactly what he needed after missing his morning meal. He swallowed and took another bite, watching the chaos unfold around him with a mixture of amusement and concern. He had not meant to cause such a scene. He had only wanted to prove a point. "Medical officer," someone was screaming. "We need a medical officer immediately. The human is dying." In white medical robes pushed through the crowd, carrying a large case of equipment. This was Doctor, the station's chief, and they looked genuinely distressed as they rushed toward Danny. Behind them came a team of assistants carrying stretchers and emergency supplies. "Do not move," Doctor commanded as they approached Danny. "Do not swallow. We may be able to extract the toxins if we act quickly." Danny finished chewing and swallowed again. He took a third bite of the apple while the doctor watched in horror. "It is really quite good," he said between bites. "Would you like to try some?" Doctor stopped a few feet away and activated a scanning device. Blue light washed over Danny's body as the machine analyzed his vital signs. The doctor stared at the results, then ran the scan again and again. Their compound eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. "This is impossible," Doctor whispered. "Your heart rate is normal. Your blood oxygen is normal. There are no signs of cellular damage or toxic shock. You should be dead." Danny shrugged and took another bite. "I told you," he said simply. Humans eat apples all the time. We have been eating them for thousands of years. They are not poison to us." The crowd had stopped fleeing. Those who remained were watching Danny with expressions that ranged from terror to fascination. The small furry alien that Danny had noticed earlier was at the front of the group, its large eyes wide with wonder. It whispered something to a companion, and Danny's translator picked up the words. "It is true. The stories about humans are true. They really can eat poison." Approach slowly, their legs trembling with each step. "But the database," they said weakly. "The Galactic Toxicology database clearly states that cyanogenic glycosides are fatal to carbon-based life forms. How can this be wrong?" Danny finished the apple, leaving only the core with its small brown seeds. He held it up for everyone to see. "The poison is in here," he explained. "In the seeds. But even then, a human would have to eat dozens of seeds to feel any effect. Our bodies can process small amounts of cyanide without harm. It is just how we evolved." Doctor was still staring at their scanner readings. They began entering notes into a data pad, their limbs moving with frantic speed. "This changes everything," they muttered. "If humans can tolerate cyanide, what else can they survive? What other assumptions have we made that are completely wrong?" Lowered his weapon slowly. His yellow reptilian eyes studied Danny with new interest, and perhaps a hint of respect. "You truly ate that without any fear," he said. "It was not a question." "Why would I be afraid of an apple?" Danny replied with a gentle smile. "On Earth, we give them to children. We put them in lunches and bake them into pies. They are a symbol of health and goodness. There is an old human saying that an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Doctor looked up sharply at this. "Your species developed a proverb about consuming toxins for health benefits," they asked in disbelief. Danny laughed softly. "I suppose we did," he admitted. Word of the incident was spreading across the station. Danny could see aliens in the distance talking urgently into communication devices, pointing toward the inspection bay. Within minutes, he knew, the story would reach every corner of Nexus 7. The human who ate the death fruit and lived. The insane creature from the poison world who consumed cyanide as a snack. The small, furry alien finally gathered enough courage to approach. They were Danny remembered from his training, a species known for their curiosity and their love of new experiences. This one's fur was a soft golden color, and their whiskers twitched with excitement. "Human," they said in a small voice. "My name is, I am a trader here on the station. May I ask you a question?" Danny nodded kindly. "Of course." Pointed at the cargo container with a trembling paw. "You have more of these death fruits, these apples." "Many more," Danny confirmed. "I brought several varieties. Red ones, green ones, some that are a mix of both. I also brought other fruits from Earth. Oranges, bananas, grapes, all of them classified as dangerous in your databases, I imagine." His eyes grew even wider. "And you eat all of them?" "Every day," Danny said. "We would become sick if we did not eat them. Fruits are an essential part of human nutrition." A murmur ran through the remaining crowd. Danny saw aliens exchanging glances, their fear slowly transforming into something else. Curiosity, wonder, the same things that had driven humans to explore space in the first place. Stepped forward again, their earlier panic replaced by scientific determination. "Human Danny," they said formally, "I believe I owe you an apology. I have spent my entire career studying xenobiology, and I thought I understood the dangers of Earth life. But I see now that I was looking at your world through the wrong lens. I classified your food as poison because it would poison me. I never considered that your species might be different." Danny smiled warmly at the, "You could not have known," he said gently. "Our worlds are very different, but that is exactly why we came here. Not to cause fear, but to share, to learn from each other, to find common ground despite our differences." Made a rumbling sound in his chest. "You speak well for a creature that just consumed toxins without flinching," he said. There was grudging admiration in his voice now. Perhaps humans are more than the dangerous primitives our reports suggested. Danny looked around at the faces watching him. He saw fear still, yes, but also the beginning of understanding. One apple had done what weeks of diplomatic meetings might never have accomplished. It had shown these aliens that humans were not just survivors of a deadly world. They were beings who could take something dangerous and make it ordinary, who could find sweetness in what others called poison. He reached into his container and pulled out another apple, holding it up so the light caught its red skin. "Now," he said with a warm smile, "who wants to learn more about Earth?" The medical bay of Nexus 7 was the cleanest place Danny had ever seen. Every surface gleamed white under soft lights, and the air smelled faintly of chemicals that his translator identified as sterilization compounds. He sat on an examination table, while doctor and three assistants moved around him with scanning equipment, taking readings from every part of his body. "We must document everything," Doctor explained as they worked. "Your biology is remarkable. The scientific community will want evidence of what we witnessed today." Danny did not mind being studied. He understood the importance of what had happened in the inspection bay. One small act had shattered assumptions that the galaxy had held about humans for years. Now, these aliens wanted to understand why humans were so different, and Danny was happy to help them learn. A security officer stood guard near the door. Her name was Lieutenant Cass Morgan, and she had been assigned to protect Danny after the Apple incident. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and a serious expression, but Danny had caught her smiling when she thought no one was looking. The whole situation amused her as much as it did him. "Your cellular regeneration rate is extraordinary," Doctor announced while studying a screen filled with data. "Your body repairs damage at speeds we have never documented in any other species. And your immune system." They paused, shaking their heads slowly. "It is almost aggressive. I have never seen antibodies that respond so quickly to foreign substances." "Humans get sick a lot," Danny said with a small shrug. "At least we used to. Our world has countless diseases, parasites, and infections. We evolved to fight them off." Doctor entered more notes into their data pad. "And the toxin resistance," they asked, "is that also a result of your environment?" Danny thought for a moment. "Partly," he said. "Earth has many poisonous plants and animals. Humans learned to avoid most of them, but some we found ways to consume safely. Cooking helps with many toxins. Sometimes we built up tolerance over generations. And sometimes we just discovered that something dangerous to other animals was not dangerous to us." The door to the medical bay slid open and entered, carrying a portable data terminal. Behind them came a tall figure that Danny had not seen before. She was a species with skin that looked like living crystal. Light moved through her body in slow waves of blue and purple. Her name was Administrator, and she was the governor of Nexus 7. Human Danny Cole said in a voice that chimed like distant bells. "I came to see for myself the being who has caused such excitement on my station." Danny stood politely, a gesture that Cass had advised him to make. "Administrator," he said respectfully, "I apologize for the disruption. That was not my intention." Studied him with eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "No," she said slowly, "I do not believe it was. Has told me everything. You were simply trying to demonstrate that your food was safe. The fault lies with our assumptions, not your actions." She moved closer, and Danny saw that her crystalline skin was warm and alive, pulsing with inner light. "I have governed this station for 40 years, she continued. "I have seen thousands of species pass through these halls, but I have never encountered anything quite like humanity." Stepped forward eagerly, holding up their data terminal. "Administrator, if I may." They showed the screen too. "I have been researching human dietary habits since the incident. The results are astounding. Humans regularly consume substances that would kill most galactic species instantly." Danny nodded in confirmation. "Coffee contains caffeine, which is a powerful stimulant. Most humans drink it every morning to help themselves wake up. Caffeine is classified as a neural toxin, doctor added from across the room. It would cause fatal seizures in a. We also eat peppers, Danny continued. Some of them contain a chemical called capsaicin that causes intense burning sensations. Humans consider this enjoyable. A murmur of disbelief passed through the room. Even Cass looked slightly embarrassed by this revelation. And chocolate added, their voice rising with excitement. Human chocolate contains theobromine, which is lethal to dozens of species. Yet humans give it as a gift of affection. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You humans, she said with wonder. You evolved on a world that tried to kill you in every possible way. And instead of dying, you learned to eat the things that tried to poison you. You turned your planet's weapons into your nourishment. Danny smiled softly. I never thought of it that way, he admitted, but I suppose that is true. The door opened again and entered, looking nervous but determined. The Small had been waiting outside, hopping for a chance to speak with Danny again. When they saw Administrator, they froze in obvious fear. Come in, said gently. I understand you were one of the first to approach the human after his demonstration. Stepped forward slowly, their golden fur standing on end. Yes, Administrator, I was curious. I have always been curious about other species, and humans are the most interesting species I have ever encountered. Danny felt warmth in his chest at these words. It was strange to be admired for something so ordinary. He had spent his whole life taking apples for granted. Now he was learning that even the simplest things about humanity were remarkable to others. Approached Danny with an expression that mixed scientific curiosity with genuine respect. Human Danny, they said formally, I must confess something to you. When I first saw those apples in your cargo, I was afraid. I thought you were either ignorant of their danger or deliberately trying to harm the beings on this station. But I was wrong. I judged you based on my own limitations, not on reality. Danny reached out and placed a gentle hand on slender limb. You were trying to protect people, he said kindly. There is no shame in that. Fear of the unknown is natural for all species, including humans. The moment was interrupted by a soft chime from his communication device. She glanced at it, and her crystalline face showed surprise. It seems, she announced to the room, that news of today's events has spread beyond my expectations. I have received a formal request from the station council. They wish to learn more about human food tolerance. She looked at Danny with something like admiration in her ancient eyes. It appears, human Danny Cole, that your simple act of eating an apple has opened doors that years of diplomacy could not. The galaxy wants to understand your species, and I believe you are the perfect teacher. Danny thought of the cargo container still sitting in the inspection bay, filled with fruits and vegetables that these aliens considered deadly. He thought of his mission to build trade relationships and promote understanding between Earth and the galactic community. And he realized that sometimes the best diplomacy was not found in speeches or treaties. Sometimes it was found in something as simple as sharing a meal. I would be honored, he said with a warm smile, and I know just where to start. The central plaza of Nexus 7 was normally used for large gatherings and celebrations. Today it had been transformed into something entirely new. Tables covered with white cloth stood in rows near the center, and each table held an assortment of Earth foods arranged in careful displays. Signs written in multiple languages identified each item along with its official danger classification in the galactic database. Danny stood behind the main table with a woman named Chef Santos, who had been called up from Earth's trade ship specifically for this event. Was a short woman with dark hair and bright eyes that sparkled with enthusiasm. She had spent 20 years developing recipes that combined Earth ingredients with alien cooking techniques. This was the moment she had been waiting for her entire career. The crowd that gathered around the plaza was enormous. Thousands of aliens filled the viewing areas, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. Some watched from balconies high above. Others pressed close to the barriers that security had set up around the demonstration area. News drones floated overhead, broadcasting the event to billions of viewers on distant worlds. Administrator stood at a podium near the tables. Her crystalline body caught the lights and scattered rainbows across the floor as she addressed the crowd. Citizens of Nexus 7 and viewers across the galactic network, she announced in her chiming voice. Today, we witness something unprecedented. Our human guests have offered to demonstrate their remarkable biological abilities for our education and understanding. Please observe with open minds, and remember that what seems impossible may simply be unfamiliar. She stepped aside and gestured for Danny to take her place. He walked to the podium feeling nervous for the first time since his arrival on the station. It was one thing to eat an apple in front of a few dozen aliens. It was another thing entirely to perform for an audience of billions. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "My name is Danny Cole, and I am a trade representative from Earth. A few days ago, I caused quite a commotion by doing something that every human considers completely ordinary. I ate an apple." A murmur ran through the crowd. Danny saw standing near the front with a group of young students. Doctor was beside them, holding scanning equipment to record everything that happened. Sat on top of a cargo container to get a better view, their golden fur practically glowing with excitement. Danny continued speaking. "I understand that many of the foods humans eat are classified as dangerous in your databases. Today, Chef Santos and I will show you that these classifications, while accurate for most species, do not apply to humans. We hope this demonstration will help build understanding between our worlds." He nodded to who picked up a small cup from the nearest table. "This," she announced, holding it up for all to see, "is coffee. It contains caffeine, which your databases classify as a Category 3 neurotoxin. Humans drink it every morning. Most of us cannot function properly without it." She took a long sip from the cup and smiled with satisfaction. Doctor ran a scanner over her and projected the results on a large screen. Her vital signs remained completely normal. A gasp of amazement rose from the crowd. Next, Danny picked up a small red pepper from a tray. "This is a pepper from a region of Earth called Sichuan," he explained. "It contains capsaicin, a chemical that causes intense burning sensations. Watch carefully." He bit into the pepper and chewed slowly. Heat flooded his mouth and throat, making his eyes water slightly. The scanner showed his heart rate increase and his body temperature rise a few degrees, but he swallowed without difficulty and smiled at the audience. "That one was actually quite mild," he said casually. "Some earth peppers are 10 times stronger. Humans compete to see who can eat the hottest ones." The crowd was silent with disbelief. Then someone began to clap, and the applause spread like wildfire through the plaza. Held up a bar of chocolate wrapped in shiny paper. "This is chocolate," she announced. "It contains theobromine, which is toxic to many mammals on Earth itself. Dogs and cats cannot eat it safely, but humans love it. We give it as a gift on holidays and special occasions." She unwrapped the bar and took a large bite, closing her eyes with pleasure as she chewed. "There is nothing quite like good chocolate," she sighed happily. Danny and continued their demonstration for nearly an hour. They ate foods that would poison, burn, or sicken most galactic species. They drank beverages that contained stimulants and fermented compounds. They explained how humans had discovered each food, learned to prepare it safely, and incorporated it into their culture. The audience grew more amazed with each demonstration. Fear slowly gave way to fascination, and fascination transformed into something like admiration. These humans were not reckless or suicidal. They were simply built differently, forged by a planet that had tested them with endless challenges and found them worthy. Finally, Danny held up an apple, the same type of fruit that had started everything. Now, he said with a warm smile, I know that many of you have been curious about these, and I have eaten many dangerous things today, but this is perhaps the most famous, the so-called death fruit from Earth. He cut the apple into thin slices using a small knife. Then he arranged them on a tray and carried it toward the barrier where the audience waited. Who would like to try? He asked gently. Silence fell over the crowd. Aliens looked at each other nervously, none willing to be the first. Then a familiar golden figure pushed through to the front. They stood at the barrier, whiskers twitching with determination. I will try it, they declared in a voice that trembled only slightly. I have been curious about this since the day we met. I trust you, human Danny. Danny smiled and held out a slice of apple. It was thin and pale, glistening with juice. The crowd held its breath as reached out with a small paw and took the slice. They brought it to their nose and sniffed carefully. Then, with courage that Danny deeply admired, they placed the slice in their mouth and began to chew. His eyes went wide. Their fur stood on end. For a terrible moment, Danny feared that something had gone wrong, then swallowed and spoke in a voice filled with wonder. It is sweet, they whispered. It is sweet and cool, and it tastes like nothing I have ever experienced. It is wonderful. The crowd erupted in cheers. Other aliens surged forward, suddenly eager to try the death fruit for themselves. Danny worked quickly to hand out slices, watching as species after species discovered the simple joy of eating an apple. Near the back of the crowd, Commander stood with his arms crossed over his scaled chest. Danny caught his eye and saw something unexpected there. The security chief was almost smiling. Perhaps, admitted quietly to no one in particular, these humans are exactly what the galaxy needs. 1 week had passed since the demonstration in the Central Plaza, and Nexus 7 had changed in ways that Danny never could have predicted. Everywhere he walked, aliens recognized him and waved with limbs, tentacles, and appendages of every kind. Some called out greetings in broken English that they had been practicing. Others simply smiled in the ways their species knew how. The human who ate the death fruit had become something of a celebrity. The trade negotiations had progressed faster than anyone expected. Earth produce, once classified as biological hazards, was now being discussed as luxury imports. Wealthy aliens across the galaxy were curious about the famous death fruit and the other dangerous delicacies that humans consumed without fear. What had started as a diplomatic obstacle had become a unique selling point. Danny walked through the commercial district toward a new shop that had opened near the main thoroughfare. A colorful sign above the entrance read delicacies in several languages. Smaller text below promised authentic Earth foods for the adventurous palate. Through the window, Danny could see arranging displays of fruit with careful attention to presentation. They looked up as Danny entered and their whole face brightened with joy. "Human Danny," they exclaimed. "You came to see the shop. What do you think?" Danny looked around at the carefully organized shelves and refrigerated cases. Apples, oranges, bananas, and grapes were arranged in artistic patterns. A section near the back contained chocolate bars, coffee beans, and bottles of hot sauce for the truly brave. Everything was labeled with detailed information about the origin, preparation, and yes, the official danger classification of each item. "It is wonderful," Danny said with genuine warmth. "You have done an amazing job." Practically glowed with pride. "I could not have done it without your help," they said. "You taught me everything about these foods, which ones are mild enough for beginners, which ones require preparation, which ones should only be attempted by those with strong constitutions." A customer entered the shop, a tall whose crystalline skin flickered with nervous light. They approached the apple display and studied the fruit with obvious curiosity. Hurried over to assist them, explaining the different varieties and recommending the sweetest ones for first-time tasters. Danny stepped outside to give them space and found waiting on a bench nearby. The scientists looked different than when they had first met. Their compound eyes were brighter, and they carried themselves with new confidence. In their limbs was a data pad covered in notes and diagrams. Human Danny called out, "I was hopping to find you here. I have something to show you." Danny sat down beside them on the bench, turned the data pad so he could see the screen. It displayed a scientific publication filled with charts and tables and dense text. "My paper on human biology was accepted by the Galactic Science Council this morning," announced with obvious pride. "It is already generating enormous interest. Scientists across dozens of systems are requesting more information about Earth life." "That is wonderful," Danny said. "Congratulations." His antennae dipped in a gesture of humility. "I could not have written it without you," they said softly. "For years, I thought I understood xenobiology. I believed that the galactic databases contained all the knowledge worth knowing. But you showed me how limited that thinking was. You taught me that true science means being willing to question everything, even the things we think we already know." Danny nodded thoughtfully. "Humans have a saying," he offered. "The more you learn, the more you realize how much you do not know." Made a clicking sound that Danny now recognized as laughter. "Your species has many excellent sayings," they observed. "I have been collecting them for a cultural appendix to my research." They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, watching aliens pass by on the busy street. Some of them were carrying bags from shop, their purchases visible through the packaging. The death fruit was spreading across the station, one bite at a time. A message notification chimed on Danny's communication device. He checked it and smiled at what he saw. "News from Earth," he told. "The Trade Council has approved additional shipments, more varieties of produce, larger quantities. They are also sending more representatives to help manage the growing demand." "And more humans means more opportunities for cultural exchange," said eagerly. "Perhaps we can organize educational events, cooking demonstrations, tasting sessions." Danny laughed softly. "You are becoming quite the ambassador yourself," he observed. Before could respond, Commander appeared from a side corridor. The security chief walked toward them with his usual serious expression, but there was something different about his posture. He seemed more relaxed, less suspicious than when they had first met. "Human Danny," Cole said formally, "I have been looking for you." Danny stood respectfully. "Commander, how can I help you?" Was silent for a moment as if struggling with something difficult. Then he reached into a pouch at his belt and produced a small object. Danny recognized it immediately. It was an apple core, dry and brown with age, carefully preserved. "I kept this," admitted quietly, "from the day of the demonstration. After everyone else had gone, I returned to the plaza and found it where someone had discarded it. I did not know why at the time. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps something else." He paused, his yellow eyes meeting Danny's gaze directly. "Last night, I obtained one of the fresh apples from the shop. I took it to my quarters where no one could see, and I ate it." Danny felt surprise and pleasure in equal measure. "What did you think?" he asked. Was quiet for a long moment. "It was good," he finally said. "Different from anything I have tasted before. Sweet and crisp and somehow refreshing. I understand now why your species values them so highly." He looked away, almost embarrassed by his confession. "I was wrong about humans," he continued. "I saw your world's dangers and assumed that anything from such a place must be equally dangerous. But I understand now that danger and destruction are not the same thing. Your world challenged you, and you rose to meet those challenges. You became strong without becoming cruel, resilient without becoming cold." "Thank you, Commander," Danny said quietly. "That means more than you know." Nodded once sharply and walked away without another word. But Danny saw his tail swaying slightly as he went, a gesture that indicated contentment. The rest of the day passed quickly. Danny helped with the afternoon rush of customers. He met with administrator to discuss long-term trade agreements. He recorded a message to send back to Earth, describing everything that had happened since his arrival. As the station's artificial sun dimmed toward evening, Danny found himself back in the medical bay with Doctor. The doctor had prepared a small meal using ingredients from Earth, following recipes that had provided. They sat together at a table, sharing food and conversation. "You know," Doctor said thoughtfully, "when I first scanned you after you ate that apple, I thought my equipment must be malfunctioning. No species could consume poison and show no ill effects. It violated everything I believed about biology." "And now?" Danny asked. Doctor gestured at the plates between them. "Now I'm eating chocolate and finding it delightful." They smiled in their own way, compound eyes crinkling at the edges. "You have changed everything, human Danny. Not just for this station, but for the entire galaxy. Word of your demonstration has spread to 100 worlds. Species everywhere are learning that humans are not monsters from a death world. You are survivors, adapters. Beings who can find sweetness in poison and companionship in the most unlikely places." Danny thought about those words as he walked back to his quarters later that night. Through the windows of the station, he could see the stars stretching out in every direction, each one potentially home to civilizations that were only just learning about humanity. He had come to Nexus 7 to sell apples and oranges and grapes. Instead, he had sold something far more valuable. He had sold understanding. He had shown the galaxy that humanity was worthy of respect, not because of strength or technology or conquest, but because of something simpler and more powerful. Humans could take the dangerous things of the universe and make them beautiful. They could find nourishment where others saw only poison. They could build bridges where others saw only barriers. And it had all started with a single bite of a simple apple. Danny smiled to himself as he prepared for sleep. Tomorrow there would be more meetings, more demonstrations, more opportunities to share his world with new friends. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to take its place among them. One fruit at a time,